Happy New Year, Mark.
Happy New Year.
Man, I'm really proud of what we accomplished with Reef Therapy in the last year, putting out a bunch of episodes and really, I don't know, connecting with a lot of reefers. More than all the content I've ever produced, people come up to me or message us about Reef Therapy more than anything. So it's been really rewarding to talk about various aquarium topics. And I think today's topic is going to be a really fun one because it's like firmly inside my wheelhouse.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing your viewpoints on it. For one, because I think you have probably the most hands-on with every reef product that I know of anybody. Um, but yeah, let's get into it. Well, let's maybe check in on our tanks because it's been a while.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you want to talk about it. Go ahead.
Not much. I I'm starting to, well, like I was joking about a New Year's resolution about not buying any coral for the year,
Mm-hmm.
but knowing that there's going to be a conference in my town, that I'll actually be able to attend, it might be kind of hard not to go to like a reef show and not pick up something.
Right.
Um, but I'm kind of fixated on, you know, gear that worked and gear that didn't, and I'm starting to just accept that I may make some changes on stuff that I spent a lot of money on, but I'm not too happy with. So, I'm probably going to pull that Deltec skimmer and go back to the Bubble Magus skimmer.
Really? I'm surprised to hear that.
Yeah, um, the wiper thing, it's good except for the fact that it doesn't clean the lid, and I've noticed, it, in theory it's great, but in practice, I noticed that the skimmer performance drastically drops if unless you take it apart and clean the cup and the lid frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've always been of the camp, and this comes back to like the Euro Reef skimmer days, of a clean lid, clean skimmer cup, one that you clean frequently. Like every time you empty it, clean it, is gonna perform the best.
Mm-hmm.
And a smaller skimmer where the cup is easy to take off and clean every other day, I think skims better. And that's what my experience was. Whereas with the Deltec, it's not, I mean, honestly, it adds like 10 seconds of your life to take it off and clean it, but it's still just that extra 10 seconds of annoyance of having to twist it off and deal with the hose and everything. But I just noticed that it skims is for good for a while, but eventually you don't get away with just turning the wiper every couple of days. Like the skimming performance drops off drastically. And then if I take the cup off and clean it like I would an old school skimmer, then I'm back in business. But that got me thinking, like, well, why don't I just go back to the other skimmer? Because I like those skimmers, because if you just take a Bubble Magus and you take the O-ring off the cup, it just sits in there, and the gravity, the weight of the cup itself is enough to create a decent seal for an in-tank skimmer. But it's just easy, like, to remove it, clean it, put it back in business. It's smaller. So it's funny, like, I feel like a smaller skimmer that you clean more frequently is better than a larger skimmer that doesn't get as much attention.
One of the things that I like about what you're saying is not so much a direct observation of that protein skimmer, but how if you have a great aquarium product and there's just one little thing that just keeps you from having an awesome experience, that is your experience with the device, whether it's a pump, a light, or a protein skimmer, or a tank, or a sump, or what have you. Just these small little holdups will just keep you from just enjoying the device or the piece of equipment as much as you could. Just like you said with the Deltec.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably an extra 10 seconds to remove it and put it back on. But if I'm going back to the route of I'm going to take this thing off every other day and just empty and clean it, then I'd rather go with the smaller, more easier to manage and easier to remove situation, right? Like you're going to make it as efficient as possible, and as from a lazy perspective, as like excuseless as possible, of not, like, you're going to do it So, and the other part is like, I mean, that skimmer cost me like 600 something bucks, right? And I don't think I'm getting the value out of it. I'd rather just sell it and go back to just an easy old skimmer with a CJ pump inside of it. So,
Ooh, I might have a skimmer for you to try out. I might have to test it, do a video real quick, but then send it your way. But yeah, actually, I kind of feel what you're saying, because I remember having like a Vertex skimmer, a Rolla exclusive skimmer, and they were threaded. They were threaded on, and you know how much work and craftsmanship it took to lathe that protein skimmer neck to have a screw joint. And what's funny is I think when the Vertex had like a female screw, and then the Royal Exclusive had a male screw thread. It was so bizarre, but it's just like, I don't want to sit here and twist the cup like 10 times just to get it off. Just let it pop off. And there's been some other skimmers in the past where it's not a really good fit on the cup, and just like you said, it's an extra 10 seconds, but just that it's not an awesome like lift and remove experience. It will just slow you down from doing it. If you know you can just take that cup off like one-handed and with a tray in the other hand, it's one of those things that just helps you to streamline your aquarium workflow. I think on the flip side, the Ultra Reef protein skimmers, they have a special kind of gasket that fits nice and snug, but it doesn't. I'm talking about gaskets, not the lid. But that really, when you put it on, you just feel a certain sense of security. And there's definitely been some skimmers in the past who were a little bit lazy about their design for the cup, and they just threw a giant O-ring on there. And yeah, sure, it's sealed, but who cares if your protein skimmer leaks a little bit for an internal protein skimmer
well,
right back into
exactly.
the sump?
That's my take, is if it's an external skimmer, make that union where the cup connects leak proof, right? But if it's sitting in my sump, I just want to be able to lift the cup out.
Absolutely.
You got to carry it across, a rug and all this other crap. You're trying not to get skimmade on the floor and piss off your wife, and you just want to clean it quickly and get it back in business. So yeah, I think I might just go back to that. I'm kind of annoyed with that cup, I'll be honest. And it's a personal thing. I think most people would probably think this is a first world problem, but
Oh, absolutely. It's a first world, like high-end reefer problem. But I'm not sure who else could talk about the nuances of protein skimmer necks and cups for 5 minutes and still have more to talk about. But
well, the other thing is I bought a, what's that Tunzi, the tall Tunzi pump?
Stream 3?
Yeah. And the way I wanted to use it was like in a tower with the little curved top on it.
The deflector, yeah.
Yeah, so I could hide it in a corner, and it's just not getting me in that arrangement. It doesn't get me the flow I want. And what I really wanted was a 6105. I think that's the model number, just the old ball stream.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because of supply chain, I don't know. It's just they've been out of stock everywhere. So I said, okay, I'll try this new pump. And I'm not happy with it. I mean, I could arrange it horizontally and put the other attachment on it, and I'll probably have to do that. But I may swap that out for, like, as soon as the 6105 is available, I might swap back to that. So it's just one of those, like, when I think about spending $600 on a skimmer for something on that pump, that's $1,000 where I haven't felt total satisfaction with those two products, and that's a lot of money, right? So yeah. I'm like, well, I might just throw those on the for sale forums and go swap that out for stuff that will make me happy, because I just don't want to live with stuff that annoys me on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely.
So.
I think this is an awesome segue, or at least a warm-up into our discussion of the top 10 new products of 2021, because there's just so many factors involved in what makes a great aquarium product. There's a lot of subjectivity, but if you look at it from a lot of different perspectives, as far as like the user experience, the value, the durability, the general operation, you can kind of get a feel for what kind of aquarists or users are going to get the most out of that product. And so that's what I really try to channel when it comes to different products that I've selected for top 10 of the year. For those of you that are maybe a little more new to the hobby, the Reef Builders has been doing just picking out top 10 new product releases for every given year, and we've had some off-the-wall devices like some of the first ever LEDs. Sometimes it was captive bred fish. I think one year it was actually eco-gorgs, the small gorgonians that were being made available throughout the aquarium hobby, so it's not like a giant 3-foot whip that doesn't fit in anybody's tank. So the eco-gorgs was a really cool one. And just selfishly this year, not even selfishly, but self-congratulatory just a little bit, I selected Reef Therapy. And it was not an easy decision, but I was like, man, I think this is one of those things, it's free. So therefore there's a lot of value and a lot of knowledge and information. And hopefully, another 10 years down the road, you and I are still around and we're still doing Reef Therapy in some shape or form. So that was one that I really thought kind of deserved that recognition. I know that might come across weird to onlookers as far as like being biased, but yeah, of course I am biased because this is just something that's really filling a niche in the reef aquarium world and community, and I know a lot of people are getting a lot from it. And since 2009, we have awarded roughly 130 different products with the prize. And man, I went back to look at like 2009, 2010, 2011, and man, some things really stood out, like the Vortec MP10, virtually unchanged except for the controller and the wireless control. Everybody's still using that. Or the Seache Voyager HP10, that's been around for 10 years. That is just like a small little outboard motor for very large and almost commercial style tanks. So there's definitely some staying power with some of the devices that we select. And one thing if you're really keep up with Reef Builders, I've already this morning I put out the article and the video talking about the top 10 new products, so you might have already gotten your fill. But one thing that I want to bring to this episode to really supplement it is the other devices, the other products that were considered.
The runners up, or
it's not like there's not
it's not a competition.
It's
really,
not an order. It's not a hierarchy or something. But discussing why some of these products didn't rise up to that top 10 rank.
I think that's fair because I bet a lot of people watched that video and probably question why some stuff wasn't on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because I think there was definitely product announcements that were more, I don't want to use hype in a bad way. Like we always talk about Instagram hype and stuff. I don't mean it like that, but I mean they had garnered a lot of attention when they were announced, right? Yep. So they were probably some of the more newsworthy products, but maybe so it'd be good to hear like why certain things were chosen.
It's kind of the backstory, right?
Yeah.
So like for example, definitely there was some Neptune fanboys who gave me a little bit of shade for not selecting the Trident, and I'm like, all right, that's an awesome product, but that's not going to have the wide-reaching, impactful,
But was that a 2021 product?
No. I'm
you're talking about last year. Yeah.
Okay. I think last year or the year before.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's an awesome product. It's got a lot of merit. It was considered. If it ran standalone, it would have been way up there. It probably would have made it if it ran standalone, because it's just, as we've seen in the Neptune sky, it's easy to throw a radio in there and get it to communicate without requiring this external device. It's just really easy to create your own walled-in garden and be like, oh, you want our very shiny new toy? Well, you have to buy into the ecosystem. But I don't want to talk about that. It's just some of the backstory. But is there a product you want to kick off with? Let's talk about the top 10, and then let's talk about the runners-up.
Okay. Well, I think you had two dosing pumps on there, and what I liked about that is I think I'm biased, but I think, in my opinion, unless you're just hardcore SBS, I think dosing now has taken front stage in terms of calcium and alkalinity management. Right now that we have reliable dosing pumps that are easily programmed from a phone, and we have a plethora of AB solutions, and even a single solution, right? Like the calcium formate that
All for Reef.
Yes, thank you. I just feel like dosing is really coming into its prime right now, and it's like part of that is just that we have such a killer selection of dosing pumps, but also we may think dosing is not that innovative, but I feel like the two dosing pumps you mentioned definitely increase the usability and
Hmm.
the I guess the adaptability in terms of the
One thing,
yeah.
people who've been using dosing pumps for the last 10 years, there's a huge assortment available, right? I think it was
Yeah.
last year or the year before that the Versas were part of that mix. And, there's a lot of Camware dosing pumps that are really specialized. And Bubble Megases have been around forever, and they kind of do the job, but they're not super reliable, and you can't
Right.
wirelessly program them. And, to be honest, for the price, the Sentia and the Reef Dose, they're all right. They're not breaking any killer new ground when it comes to like innovation and value, but I will put money on it right now that 10 years from now we'll still be talking about Reef Doses and Sentias.
Mm-hmm.
Sentias are going to be huge. It's the Seachem Aquavitro Sentia. So we're just going to talk about the two dosing pumps first. I guess that's what we're going to do. The Seachem Aquavitro Sentia, it's only sold in retail stores, so it's supporting your brick and mortar stores. And Seachem is one of the biggest out of all the additive manufacturers that go fresh and salt. They have the biggest footprint in the freshwater planted aquarium world, right? Every other high-end plant additive, they don't make saltwater stuff, right?
Right.
So when it comes to Sentia Dose, that is going to be the first dosing pump for literally tens of thousands of aquascapers. By the end of the year, by the end of this year, freshwater and intermediate hobbyists will be introduced to the magic of automatic dosing, wireless programming, smartphone controlled dosing through that particular pump. And it's really cool. It's $150 for one pump, and then you add secondary units. I think they're $99. However much you want, they just slap right on, and you don't need further radios. You don't have to program them. I mean, you have to program in the app, but you don't have to program them to your network. So everyone you add on, it's already part of your system. And I'm trying to think like how many different types of dosing pumps I have here, and I only use the very dumbest and the very smartest. None of this in between stuff. The really dumbest are really fun because you want to program it, just press a button right now. There's not even a menu. You just press a button, up, down, and they're really practical. So yeah, I use both of these dosing pumps, and the Red CD Reef Dose is a super cool value proposition. I want to say it was like $239, $249 for the 2-channel, and then $349 for the 4-channel. And both of these companies have removable and replaceable dosing pump heads.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to add, because
Us old timers will be very familiar with taking a pump apart and threading the neoprene silicone stuff out and putting in your new one. But if you want to just do some quick maintenance and pop in on and off a replacement dosing pump head, yeah, that's going to be the most convenient and goes back to the user experience.
yeah, that's for me. I mean, I've had a GHL doser which was technically usable as a standalone unit without having a GHL controller.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really hard time with it in terms of just using it as a standalone, and you could blame the user, but I feel given my occupation, I'm pretty tech savvy, and I had a lot of problems with it. Not to disparage, GHL, I just wasn't very happy with that experience. Then I've had the Bubble Magus dosers. They were not very. I had reliability issues with those. Now I use the Neptune dose, but you have to be part of that ecosystem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So really, the only one that was really existing in that space of, I feel like, usability and affordability was Kamur. And I do have a Kamur doser on my basement little setup, and it's been great. But just seeing what Red Sea has done, as well as like the Aqua Vitro, it's the fact that the heads are easily replaceable, so you can just have a seasonal thing of just swapping those out, and it's easy, it's modular. And then the price point, I just feel like it's made it beginner friendly. Like I look at like the Reef dose, for example, from Red Sea. It's very user friendly. The interface, someone that's just getting started in the hobby can make easy sense of it. I haven't used the app, but I've seen a lot of demos of the app, and unless the app is buggy, which I don't know, it seems like it seems really well designed, right? Because you have a large company that probably has a good software development team, an app development team behind it. So you have, I don't know, I think you have a really good package. And like I said, I think dosing is going to be, I mean...
I would like to point out, before I forget, that on any calcium reactor powered aquarium that I have, I also use dosing.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Because I don't want to sit there and adjust my calcium reactor up and down on a weekly or monthly basis. Just let it run and provide like the bulk meat and potatoes of the the demands that your tank needs, like 80, 90, 95%. And then for the small adjustments, I mean, again, this is a technical hobby. Just get one little dosing pump for buffer, and then you can turn that up and down. And then once you get to a point where, all right, now I'm dosing 100 mLs on top of my calcium reactor, now's the time to turn up my calcium reactor, turn on my dosing, and use the doser for those fine adjustments.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it's, well, you have one that's modular and you have one that is multiple heads. So assuming you already lock away 2 dosing heads for your A and B, it's very easy for you to get into dosing trace elements, right? If you want to start experimenting with that. Carbon dosing, because I keep talking about calcium and alkalinity, but I mean, there's just so many opportunities that you can use it to tinker and get a consistent result, right? If you want to look at, I wonder if using this trace element additive benefits my tank. If you're doing it based on manual dosing, I feel like you're going to get, you're going to forget, you're going to have your ups and downs with it. But if you just program a doser and say, well, I'm going to add 2 mLs a day and see what happens. Okay, I may increase it by 1 ml. Like it's a really handy tool to see, does this trace element additive help me, right? And what is the magic dose? Because it's so consistent for you. It's not a human doing it. I'm sure
Seachem and Red Sea aren't thrilled about both of their dosers being talked in the same sentence.
Yeah.
But they're both additive manufacturers. And, like when you fire up the Reef Beat app, it asks you what you're dosing, and it'll has some clue of the concentration of the product you're dosing. I use primarily like self-mixed Brightwell powders, so that I can't really enter that. But for example, on the video I did about the Aquavitro Sentia, not only does the app scan the UPC and know what you're using, it knows the size of the bottle. I don't know why that little extra detail blew my freaking mind, because I did it on camera and I was like, oh my God, it knows that this is a 4-liter bottle of Flourish XL and then I'm going to be dosing it to a plant tank. So then I don't even have to tell it how much volume is left.
How did it know that?
Oh, you just scan the barcode.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah.
Seachem barcode, Seachem app, Seachem product is just like, it knows that's the synergy, and that's I'm just kind of surprising, right? That this is are these the first dosing pumps by additive companies? I think they are, right? So big ups to Comware. They are a dosing pump company, so they have a dosing pump for like every application. One fun fact about the Sentia: it's built by Seachem. When you open it up, it's got a Comware motor up in there.
Interesting.
And another interesting point is when I first started using the Sentia at the medium and high speed, it has a tone. It has like a beep tone. And I was just like, how is this even possible? And I was just like, I was really floored by it. And then I just thought, there's no way I'm going to keep using this. But somehow it just went away. And even the chugga action got really quiet, to the point where I'm like, I go over there once in a while and I have one of the pumps feeding a Aquavitro element calcium reactor. That's the raw water feed, and I used to hear it when it would go off, chugga, and then now it's gotten so quiet I have to go over there and touch it and to see that it's on. It's kind of cool. But yeah, those are 2 dosing pumps. We have a lot more stuff to get through, so off to the next one.
All right, I'll let you suggest the next one.
All right, so we're just going to get these out of the way because you haven't seen them, and they're both really new and still really scarce. They just kind of hit my inbox towards the end of the year, but they're not the kind of thing that you need to test, right? And I'm talking about cornerstone branch rock and Tropic Eden Pukani rock. This stuff is freaking amazing. This stuff is going to change people's minds about what man-made rock should look like. I almost think this stuff will single-handedly send a few of the other manufacturers back to the drawing board, especially the Pukani, because you look at it, you're like, what the heck? How is this even possible? It looks just so. If you obviously you're listening to this podcast, so they're both surprisingly lightweight. When you look at them, you'd think they would be super heavy. They're both branch rock, but where cornerstone is like really thick branch rock, very similar to like the Tonga branch back in the day. The Pukani rock is made up of smaller branches. So like thinner branches kind of glued together. That doesn't sound great, but I'm telling you, if you see this stuff in a tank, you will just assume that that is some crazy rare holdover live rock from the ocean. And they both have incredible coloration.
Yeah, I mean, specific to the Tropic Eden one, you showed me some pictures of that. I didn't want to, talk forever about my tank, but the other thing I'm not happy about is sort of how the aquascape turned out, right? And when I saw that stuff, it just reinforced this idea that I feel like I want to re-aquascape. And
I miss being excited about the rock.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that was even a thing until I saw, like, branch rock is branch rock, it's cool and it creates some dramatic shape and it helps you like kind of lift stuff up. But the Pukani rock, it's named after old school Fiji Pukani live rock. Man, it looks so much like it too. There was something about it that just got me excited about. Like, I remember working at stores and picking out one rock from every third live rock shipments and setting it aside for my own tank, for a display tank at the store or something, and then just looking out for those like really treasured, magical looking pieces. And the Pukani stuff from Tropic Eden, I think it's only available from Premium Aquatics right now.
They
I
have
think they
that
work together on it.
They have like nice shelf pieces too, and
but the shelves are made of small branches.
Right.
They are not flat slabs. You hold them up, and it's like someone took a semi-consolidated tabling acropora and let stuff grow on it and fuse it together. It looks incredible, and I think that was really. I need to find out who came up with the idea to put a little shoulder on each of the slabs of shelf rock from Pukani, because whoever did that, they really have experience aquascaping. You're never going to use a flat rock by itself, right? You're always going to stack it on top of something else. So why not give basically every slab a little bit of a bump or shoulder on one side? That's going to allow you to do some really tricky cantilever stuff for dramatic, free-floating shelves, or even for just general stacking, because if every one of them has a little shoulder, you just, go up, and you don't need so many filler rocks.
Yeah, I really felt like what I wanted to do with my tank was, originally I wanted not to have a lot of rock, but I wanted a very flat aquascape, right? Because I wanted a shallow tank. And one, I felt like I deviated from that because I got a little too excited with the super glue sand mixture stuff. But the other thing is, I ordered a bunch of Carib Sea stuff. I went to my local fish store and I bought Carib Sea stuff. And it's all this kind of chunky stuff that was really hard to work with. So what I ended up doing is breaking it up with a hammer and then using the super glue to glue it back together. I wanted to use flat shelves, but the only option at the time were those Marco rocks that were like cut, like look like they've been
perfect slabs.
Yeah, like they're like you could tile your bathroom floor with them.
Yep.
And that just looks so artificial to me. Plus, at the time I only saw them in white, and I like starting off with purple rock. That's just I don't want to start with white rock and then wait for the coralline to show up. And I do see now you can order those flat tiles in purple, but
well, that's news, because I haven't been talking to Joe about making them that way, and I'm sure that's been on their agenda, but I didn't realize that they were doing that. Is that from Marco? Is there someone else?
No, it's
those rocks?
Carib Sea doing it. I don't know. But they look like Marco, like they're perfectly flat. I don't know.
Quarried rock.
Yeah, maybe it's not. I don't know. I only saw it online, but But when you had the article about the Tropic Eden stuff, I was like, man, I wish that stuff was around when I was aquascaping my tank. And then I just, again, just like the pump and the skimmer, like, okay, I wasted some money, but I'm not going to settle on, crap that I'm not happy with. So I'm highly debating buying some of that Tropic Eden stuff and just redoing the tank one weekend and just going with a nice flat aquascape that gives me nice shelves to put some more LPS and stuff off the sand bed. And that rock, and it looks exactly like you said, it looks like the old stuff that we used to get excited about, not just this
So
flat.
one catch 22 about the Bucani rock, the wild and the natural stuff. It's incredibly open and incredibly porous, which is great for allowing flow and letting things grow in there, but it's also great at catching stuff.
Yeah.
So I remember on the forums, people would have their Pucani tank set up for a year using Pucani rock. It'd be great. And then they would have kind of these mystery kind of nutrient buildups because it was so porous that if you didn't have incredible flow, crazy mind-blowing flow where your tentacles are only going one direction at a time, or get in there with a power head once in a while and create a storm, it is going to trap that detritus. Unless you use just a very small amount or have a lot of flow. So that's something to keep in mind. It's really cool rock, and I'm pretty sure it's going to set the tone. We're going to see a lot of other companies taking some notes from the Tropic Eden and the Cornerstone rock. And the last thing I want to say about them, they have a premium price on the sticker. But when you see them in real life, they're surprisingly lightweight. I think I had one piece of the Cornerstone that broke, and I think I saw like little bits of styrofoam in there. Not a problem,
really?
but it was like you pick it up and you're like, wait, is this actually rock? It's lighter than like if it was made out of resin.
Interesting. Okay.
For sure.
Yeah, maybe I'll order a small box and just get my hands on it before I commit to a large purchase.
Okay. All right. What else would you like to talk about? What's next?
Let's see. Let's
I
talk
want to talk
about. Okay.
I want to talk about my flake food crush.
Oh yeah.
And just because this one is an easy one to kind of knock out, cool mysis and cool greens, and I think there's a third one that I didn't get. Might have been for cichlids or something. But between the meat of the mysis and the protein of the mysis and the herbivory of the cool greens, dude, that food is that's in a league of its own. I think I might have talked about this on a previous session of how I went looking for flake food, and I got this stuff in, and I was like, what the heck? A pound is $10. A pound is $10, and it's kind of flake food you could show up and share with your friends at the old school, like African cichlid or discus or local like classic aquarium club, and no one is going to scoff at that food. Big, chunky, crispy flakes. I've put about 2 pounds through my serving container. There is no dust to speak of. No dust. Yes, there's small crumbles, but it's not like the dominant thing. I have to break up the flakes and break up the flakes. I feel like that might also be a hand-packed food. Really, really cool stuff. So that was not a new food. I think that's been on the market for a really long time.
Yeah, it's from Brine Shrimp Direct, right?
From Brine Shrimp Direct. I'm sure there's some old timers who are like, oh, I've been using that food for forever. What's wrong with you? And I'm like, but I just found it. And it's really good. And I found some 3-pound pails on Amazon. So it's from Brine Shrimp Direct, but just really easy to order on Amazon. The 3-pound pails were $29. Do you know how much do you know how much PE mysis you can get for $29? You can get like 2 jars with, for a total of, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 ounces. It's literally a tenth the price, even if you buy a half-pound container. And it sounds like a lot when you say half-pound, but we're really only talking about 8 ounces, right? And if you compare that to just any food at Walmart, at your mom and pop shop, old school Tetramin. How many times can I say old school?
You got me picturing some guy breeding epistogrammas in his basement that's like using this food back
No,
in
he's not using that food.
1990.
He's using live blackworms and shredded beef heart and then some rapashi mix that he's making his own by freezing it. But yeah, cool mysis and cool greens, really awesome addition to the studio. Incredibly better and cheaper or more cost effective than frozen food. And I don't have to thaw it out, and it's there. And you look at the ingredients; it doesn't start off with filler. It starts off with like whole mysis or whole kelp. Really impressive stuff. I think I'm going to be using that for a long time.
I had some bloat issues with my fish, and I think I was overfeeding a bit on the flake.
Wasn't that pellets though?
No, it was the flake. It was the what's the other flake that you liked? I gave that stuff a shot.
The CS Pro. The
came in like a little white jar.
Yeah, the CS Pro, super red flakes.
Yeah, the fish loved it. So I think I got a little too, plus I had some new fish that I was trying to fatten up. And so it's probably my fault. But I noticed it happened with the flake and not with the pellets. And that got me a little gun shy about flakes again. I went back to pellets. But you haven't had that issue.
Yeah, so when it comes to the cool mysis and cool greens, that's kind of a selfish choice because it really fills in an awesome niche, but it also shows what is possible to provide a very high quality food and a great feeding experience, but also at a cost that makes you scratch your head at why these other brands are so expensive.
Yeah, and I imagine a lot of food is also just repackaged. I could be wrong, but how many plants are there that are converting mysid shrimp into a flake compacted format? I don't know. Maybe.
I think it's going to be mostly fish meal. And it's like leftover fish meal that's been left to sit out in the sun, and they're like, oh, it's fine, we'll just cook it and process it and turn it into a flake for people's guppies and mollies. No big deal. So another one that would be really cool to get through quickly is the Coral Finder 2021. It's a good coral identification book. There's been literally 2 books released for the aquarium hobby, the reef aquarium hobby, in the last 2 years. So didn't go up against a lot of competition, but we've already talked about Russell Kelly's book. It's byoguides.com, I think. And I think it's like $50, $60 and great new photographs that were not crowdsourced. Right, so the BYO guide started with a lot of Charlie Varen's like old school. There it is again. His old timey photographs taken with film, in like the 80s and 90s. And over the last decade, Russell Kelly has worked to make the photographs, like capture the corals in the way that he wants for this guide. And it just really shows when you see this guide. And if you know a little bit of the backstory, it's no coincidence that it turned out so awesome.
Yeah, I like it too because of the way it's put together, like a spiral notebook.
Yep.
It's one of those few things where if you have a coral that you're trying to figure out what it is, I feel like this sort of, the way it guides you to try to figure out what it is so much better in a book format than trying to do something like that online and doing online research to come to a quick answer.
Absolutely.
And then, I haven't done a lot of scuba diving lately, but it's like a great book to take on a dive trip, in its spiral format, so you could quickly like look something up and be like, oh yeah, that's what I saw. It just has a cool a cool interactive format to try to get you to what you're trying to figure out. It's not just a bunch of words and stuff. So
yeah, the only thing it's missing is the first versions. Actually, I don't know if this was standard or if it was an option. There was a waterproof version. Still spiral bound. You could literally take it diving.
Throw it in your dive bag.
Well, throw it in your fish store. Throw it in your fish room. Keep it around your tank. Who cares if you get water on it? Use it to like put a coral on to move to the other tank, So I think, I would pay a $20 premium to have an extra copy of it that is waterproof, or to take diving and knowing it's just going to be super rugged. And it has the complimentary videos to help you learn how to use the book, and also to drill a little bit deeper beyond what the book can tell you. So it's got that going on, and that's like a must-have for any coral aquarium reference or diving reference. Just there's nothing like it. Is the best.
Yeah, and in the era of $100 frags, this book is
Mhm.
pocket change, you know.
It
For
won't die.
yeah,
It'll burn, but it's not going to die.
yeah,
That's the thing that kills me. I have talked to a bunch of reefers who will ask me some kind of deeper questions, and I'll ask them if they've read the Reef Aquarium or Modern Coral Reef Aquarium or even Ops Clam book, and those are just still like ultimate textbooks for a lot of coralology and aquariology, and I think they're, even when you've been in the hobby for a long time, I think in any pastime for a long time, there's a tendency to think you remember things, right? You think you remember things a certain way, but it's been shown by science that memory is kind of fleeting. And so anytime I'm writing about a certain fish or coral and some piece of equipment, I will pull 3 books down and I'll see what each one of them has to say about the distribution range of a particular dottyback or tilefish or a particular coral. And most of the times, yeah, I just verify that I remember things correctly, but there's always some little nuggets of information there that you just never knew. One great case in point is Scott Michael's book here, the one that has the Hamlets. It's the only reference I could find that talked about the golden hamlet being somewhat abundant off some mosquito reef in Venezuela, I want to say. And that's like the kind of juicy nuggets of information that are super cool to know when you're very into an oddball fish.
yeah. A good example this week was Mike Paletta posted a picture of length size reef tank from the
Mhm.
ecosystem method, and there was a picture of a pygmy angel, and
Oh, no.
they were commenting on it, and I think it was like, is it a Centropage nahakii, or like, I think that's where the comments were kind of going. And I recall that the general multicolor angelfish under intense lighting will brown up on you, right?
It'll get really dark.
So I was sitting there like, I kind of want to comment that I think it's just a browned out multicolor, but I'm like, I don't know. And so then I got my angelfish books down and I started, digging around to try to see what does it look like more. I don't know. It does have a pretty significant blue crown on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, which a multicolor wouldn't
sh-
have.
A big male can develop a pretty good blue crown on it. Just almost every bit as big as a nahaki. I've never seen a nahaki personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll darken up like a nahaki. But, just to kind of finish up with the books, everybody's familiar with the rabbit hole of the internet. I want everybody to know, like, that started with books.
Mm-hmm.
You go down a rabbit hole with books. Alice in Wonderland is a book, and so if you ever look something up in a book that you want to reference that also has its own references, so you can go verify those too, I challenge you to crack open a book and not find a total distraction, a little side distraction, a rabbit hole that just grabs your eye. Like, I'll flip over to one particular coral and a different page will catch my eye and I'll be like, oh, I haven't thought about that coral in a really long time. I wonder where those are at, So super fun experience. And as you can see in the library next to me, I'm a big book fan.
Yeah, mine's off camera, but it's technically behind me.
So we've talked about two new types of live rock, 2 new types of dosing pumps. Let's talk about 2 lights.
Let's do it.
Let me get the the Max Spec jump out of the way, because that one kind of snuck up on me, right? We're going to be waxing poetic about the Kessel A500 for a minute. So the Max Spec jump is, I want to say 269, like 65 watts, metal construction. It harkens back to clusters of lenses instead of really trying to diffuse out the light. And I kind of like the light. It's got a brightness to it with really good assortment of blue and royal blue. It's 5-6 channels, wirelessly controllable, everything you'd expect, without a hub. But it wasn't until I raised it 6 inches higher than the arm stand that comes with it that I fell in love with it. Because with the arm stand, the arm mounting arm, it doesn't get high enough and it creates a little bit of a hot spot. And so when I was able to get it a full 18 inches over a 24-inch cube, it just filled that tank just beautifully, perfectly. It's quiet, great color, and it's got a certain kind of crispy blue coloration that really makes all my orange acans, true acanthastrias in that tank, just pop like nothing else. That lighter blue color is way better for bringing out the oranges than some of the deeper purples that we'll talk about in a bit.
That's
and it's
a light.
$265. It's
Yeah.
$265. You know, so many people are going to enjoy that light.
But you're like the only person that's talked about that light, and I found that rather odd because I don't see it for sale in a lot of places.
It is. It is. It is for sale from a lot of vendors. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, because I've looked up the price so many times. I've seen it on Bulk Reef Supply, saltwateraquarium.com. I think Premium has it too. Are there any other companies? Aquacave. It's available, but yeah, it doesn't have that hype factor, right?
Yeah.
MaxSpect is a Hong Kong, Shenzhen-based Chinese company, and they have a local distributor, so they're not empowered as much to create the same kind of hype. But it's not a hype light. It's not a hype light. It's a great value light that is going to get you a ton of mileage. And the thing is, they have like a white version and a blue version, you know, similar to the Radion. So there's one with a little bit more whiter spectrum, one with a little bit bluer spectrum. But for $265, it's just like a beefier version of the Prime. I love the Primes, tons of applications, you know, wireless control. But having all those LEDs clustered in the middle, it turns it into kind of a almost spotlight. Whereas the Ethereal has, I want to say, 6 clusters of 4 LEDs and enough color control that you can really dial in what you want. And for $265, I just don't think there's anything else in that price point, and it's metal. It's metal, so it doesn't even have to spin up that hard because the whole body acts as a heatsink.
But like I'm not to disagree with you, but I'm on Bulk Reef Supply and I don't see it. I mean, they've got the razors.
Well, maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, it seemed when you did the video on it, it seemed like a very appealing light for like an LPS tank specifically, right? Or just somebody that's just kind of that doesn't need to just crank out, you know, 400 micromoles of par on every corner of the tank. So I got really curious about it, but I guess I just had I thought it was interesting, like that there wasn't.
Oh, and it comes with the mounting arm. Yeah, so that is the thing that I try to do. I try to cut through the hype. Sometimes certain products have way too much hype that's not commensurate with what the product actually is, and then other times you have like these kind of hidden gems like the MaxSpect Jump 65 that are awesome lights. $265 with a metal mounting arm, no hub required. It's a great little piece of kit, and because they haven't made a huge campaign about it, probably because what's the point of investing in a bunch of advertising when there's chip shortages and you can only and supply, you know, shipping constraints, you know, that's probably part of it. I'm guessing.
Well,
right?
And I mean, it wasn't, you know, one of the hot new items, but like at Current USA, they came out with a small pendant light, and it just, I'm just surprised that on YouTube and all of these reef-related YouTube channels where they're always talking about new products, a lot of them don't talk about these lights. And the funny thing to me is, like, the hottest corals right now are, you know, hammers and torches and goniaporas and all these, you know, which you don't need an XR30, you know, like if you're going to set up a nice LPS tank with your true acans or micromusas or blastos, and you've got some torch corals and you're going for all these really cool corals, you don't need all of that horsepower, right? Like you could get away with.
I'm glad you brought up the Current USA light because I did try it out.
Yeah.
It has fantastic deep blue coloration. It's the counterpoint to the MaxSpect. MaxSpect has kind of that brighter, almost greenish, but not quite, but bright blue coloration that makes oranges pop. The Current USA has incredible deeper blue, like that violet. You know, if the Current USA is VHO, and then the MaxSpect is more like the Power Compacts or T5. So I set it up. I tried it out. It's $250. It also has a metal enclosure. It's pretty good, but you can kind of tell, you know, they use a gooseneck mount, and there's a couple of cost-saving things here and there. Bluetooth connection was fine, but man, when I turned on the white,
Yeah.
I was like, what did you do? I think Current USA, they have been using an 8K white LEDs, right? So almost like a little bit of a rosy white LED that works really well for displaying fish in freshwater tanks, and it does not pair well with the deep blues. That is entirely subjective. That is entirely my opinion. But, if you fire up a Current USA and put it on your tank and you like the blues, if you only use the blues, I think the Current USA would be awesome for that deeper light. But I think you're just going to get a lot more mileage out of something like the Max Spect. But you're absolutely going to grow corals and have them looking good. And there's no reason why you couldn't just bring your own whites to that the really deep blue party that the Current USA offers as well. Yeah, no, that's one reason I didn't talk about it, because I don't want to be like, it's like half good. It's like half great, but that white needs to be warm, not rosy.
Yeah, no, and I think I was just going there in the sense that I was glad that you put it on your list, because I don't know about other people. There's always somebody asking me like, hey, I want to set up something. I like your tank. I want to set up something. I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you help me just set up like a small, cool little reef tank, or, like a 75? And I'm always mindful of, this is an experiment for them. They may not like it. I'm not going to push them into an $800 light.
Never. I'll be like, get a used, like 5-year-old light that
Yeah.
when you turn it up all the way, there's just no way you're going to bleach or grow a ton of algae. No, I'm right there with you. If someone wants to set up a basic tank and you want to give them some training wheels, all right, we're going to give you a kiddie light to start with.
Yeah, and that's, it's good that there's still some innovation in that budget range, right? Of like, look, I like my LPS, or hey, I'm just starting out and I just want something that's affordable, that has Bluetooth, that I can still do cool, fun things with. So
If you spend $200-ish on your tank and stand, and then you get the Max Spect Jump L165, and you have $1,000 budget, that leaves you about $500 for just like a power filter and rock and corals. So if somebody was doing $1,000 full tank setup, the Max Spec Jump would be my new favorite for that kind of application.
Gotcha.
All right, you ready to go to the other end of the spectrum, a light that you and I both loved, and regular listeners will know what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Dude, that Kessel A500. I think we're going to be talking, that's going to be like the radium of spotlight form factors for 10 years. Easy.
Yeah, I like that light a lot. I
like turtles.
I like turtles. Every time you read like the marketing bullet points of any product, I always take it with a grain of salt. And so, you read about Kessels and how they are able to add more colors in that, wavelength chart that we all look at, like more dots on that line that we all stare at in, these light reviews, because they add phosphorescent coatings to LEDs to shift them up and, into different spectrums. And I was like, yeah. But then when I put the light on my tank, the first thing I noticed was like the colors that just I feel like they get ignored under LEDs. I mean, a pink fish is freaking pink, right? An orange fish is orange. I mean, just
like that it's not fluorescent.
Yeah.
Like it's not actual fluorescence, but it behaves that way. There's some like resonance between the spectrum of the light and the pigment of the animal that is just so one-to-one that it creates a kind of glow that is akin to fluorescence in white lighting. Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
I mean, I've had LEDs that I've had fixtures with red LEDs in them where I've cranked up the reds out of curiosity to see what that looked like. And then I've done it on the Kessel for fun. And if you have a flame angel, it's ridiculous what it does to that fish. And what's weird is it didn't blow out the colors of everything else. It's
so it's like some regular reds will introduce red coloration to your tank. But deeper red color, it's like UV. It'll bring out the color without affecting the overall spectrum.
Yeah, so you can really like punch the things that are red or orange in your tank without necessarily compromising on the overall look of your tank, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that, and of course, I'm a sucker for shimmer, and it's just nice to have a fixture that has the wattage well, I mean, you used to have halides in 150 range, right? I was always a 250 watt user, and it's not quite 250 watts, but it's akin, it doesn't need to be 250 watts to compete with a 250 watt halide, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's just, yeah, it's a good fixture.
And just to be clear, the A500, the Kessel A500X is a premium aquarium light. It's going to be a workhorse. It is not the light I would recommend for almost anyone unless they've ran a tank before, or they have a really deep tank, or they know they want to do clams and acros. It's got a small form factor. I want to say it's like 850, 870 or something, but you still have to, get some mounting solutions, bring some mounting solutions, and maybe the angle adapter on the end, and then some lenses, because I think the A500 ships with the 55-degree lens, and then you can add the 35-degree lens. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think so.
And that's, that one is separate. But man, just the way it makes a tank look. I'm looking at my tank right now. They're 4 feet above the bottom of the tank. It's lighting 2 feet of mangroves on one side of the tank, and then 2 feet deeper, it's like 30 inches by 25 inches of soft corals that are looking amazing. But I also grew acros and clams on that bottom, and I've been using that as my rotating tank for things I want to see that have been in some of the shallow pools. And man, I'll tell you what, one of my next challenges this year is I got to figure out how to I'd like to propagate my mangrove through cuttings. And I have the rooting hormone solution and all that stuff, and I know the concept. And I don't want to take all these trimmings of these mangroves and just throw them away, just to kind of bonsai up my mangroves to buy me some time before they completely grow out of the tank. But man, now when I look at videos of those mangroves just from this summer, from like 6 months ago, incredible. I got more growth in the last 6 months, not just due to the A500s, but also the misting that I applied to them, the automatic, rain effect on them. I got more growth out of them in the last 6 months than the previous year and a half. They are bushes. They are bushes now.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a light for bathing every corner of your tank, right? If you want to grow an acro under an overhang, it's not the right light for you unless you supplement it. But if you are just going for an aesthetic, if you're going for, if you're looking for, a tank that doesn't bathe the room in light either, I mean, it's crazy. Like, you can really get the light really fixated into the tank. There's no glare,
Not just into the tank, but also pointed backwards.
Yeah.
You and I have been just cheerleaders for angling your light backwards. Mount the light a little bit forward, angle it backwards, and you'll light up more of that front-facing side of your tank that you look at all the time. So both of mine are mounted 40 inches high. They're almost right over the front glass, and then pointed backwards about, I want to say 5 degrees, not more than 10. And it's just amazing. There's no light coming out of that hits the floor. It all goes straight into the tank.
Yeah, I've done other fixtures. I did T5s, and I always hated, especially because when you have small kids looking up at the tank and stuff, I hated lights that were just, yes, the tank's getting a ton of light. Yes, every nook and cranny of the tank's getting light, but you're also just cranking light all over your rug, your kids looking up into the UV, and I just never liked, even with halides, I don't know, I really love the fact that they have those lenses and you can really just zero it in. So
well, you can customize them in their really versatile. You can adjust the color, adjust the intensity, you can adjust the height, you can adjust the beam angle, and then you can adjust the angle to where it's pointing at. So it's the opposite of the Neptune sky.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally diametrically opposite. I want to get to that, but we still have one more great new product to write about. But is there anything more you wanted to say about the Kessel A500X?
No, I think it's pretty clear that I like the lights a lot.
Yeah, no, we've talked about them a lot. If you haven't seen one yet, it might be challenging to grasp why we love this light so much. But yeah, it's in a category on its own, and I think we'll be talking about this light or its successors 10 years from now easily. So we went from a very sexy product to now let's talk about something super kind of boring but incredibly important. I'm talking about the Hanna Nitrate checker. I've got
your list here, and I'm trying to guess before you say it.
That's the last. I think that's the last one on the list. We talked about the 2 lights,
the
2 pumps, the 2 dosers, an assortment of stuff. But yeah, it's a Hanna Nitrate checker. There's nothing sexy about testing your water, except when you test it and everything's on point. That's awesome. That's always very fun. But it just transformed my understanding of how much nitrate was in my tank. I've said it so many times. Your colorimetric test kits that you have to use with your eye, they're like clear, like a tiny bit pink, and then fuchsia. So you're like, I have 0, I have some, I have too much. That is essentially the range of Elos and Nios and Red Sea test kits.
Well, even the low range nitrate checker that Hanna had, forget the fact. That was not practical.
That was almost research.
Yeah, I was going to say, forget how many steps it had, but I don't feel like that information, again, this is subjective. I don't feel like the information you would need to get out of that range is valuable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anything between 0 and 5 or 0 and 10, I'm not too worried about. I guess that's more, we've talked about this, when you actually have measurable nitrates, your corals enjoy that. I mean, in my opinion. Now, if you get too high, it's a different story. But so I feel like the high range checker is more in line with what you should actually care about. Plus, it's easier to do. So you're going to do it more frequently.
Yes, absolutely. And so, someone who's got their tank dialed in and they have, they feed their tank a certain amount and they have a decent amount of corals and sand and rock. They know they're keeping some nitrates, but they're not letting them go too high. They don't need this. But my tanks are super clean because I have a ton of flow, no sand, minimal live rock, and tons of corals. So left unchecked, my nitrates will go to 0 parts per million. And so because of that, the last year and a half, I've been learning how to mix up potassium nitrate, make my own solutions, what's a good concentration to run at, how much to dose, how quickly the corals suck it up. And because of this, the resolution of the Hanna Nitrate high range, I think it goes up to 75, but most of us are going to be dabbling in 0 to 30 or something. I can measure how fast it's going down. I can measure and characterize the nutrient levels in my tank, and it's just, for me, it's a game changer. If you have any tank above 50 gallons, or you're a coral farmer or a commercial facility, like, you don't need one of these. You need like 5. Right, you just line them up and test a bunch of water at once. You have to have this right next to your calcium, alkalinity, magnesium test kit. It's that important, especially if you really want to push the envelope. I think there's a lot of folks who are chasing that pH range right now, trying to hit 8.3. I was trying to hit 8.5, humble brag, but I feel like dialing in a good nitrate level, a good level, a steady nitrate concentration is going to be even more beneficial than trying to chase those high pH numbers. Because guess what? If you chase those high pH numbers, we get your pH up to 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, guess what's going to happen? Your corals are going to grow faster, and they're going to suck on that nitrate. And then one day you're looking in your tank and realize everything is pale as heck, and you're like, whoa, what's wrong with my tank? But if you don't have a good understanding for how much your tank is requiring and demanding those nutrients, your corals are going to stop growing. So I would say having a nitrate level of 5 to 20 is more important than having your pH at 8.3 to 8.5.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like the whole pH chasing, we went for decades.
There's a lot of dangers there, man. There's a lot of pitfalls, and I think we'll let the listeners and the viewers tell us if they want us to do a whole conversation on pH. But I just feel like there's a lot of traps there, and that's beyond the scope of this discussion today.
No, I wasn't going to go too deep on it, but I agree that knowing where your nitrate's at, getting it to a level that's, if you're at 0, elevating that level so it's measurable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless you've got, algae problems galore, nutrient problems, like don't dose nitrates. I'm saying your nitrates are 0 and you're wondering if your corals are, hungry. It's just a good metric and just a good way, again, to do some interesting experiments and say, okay, what if I dose enough potassium nitrate to get it up to 5 ppm? I mean, I remember calling you when I started dosing nitrates. I think we both started experimenting with it around the same time, and
Mm-hmm.
there was like a reaction in my softies and LPS where they just got swollen. Like they
Swole.
they
Yep.
just.
Yep.
It's like they were like, I'm gonna soak up as much water in my tissues. I'm not a coral biologist, so I'm probably getting this wrong, but it almost seemed like, they were trying to get their Gatorade, like they were just drinking, they were drinking it up, it was fascinating to watch.
No,
Anyway.
it's a really important nutrient, and this is the best tool we've ever had to analyze it at home.
Yep.
All right, so we have kind of like an assortment here to talk about, and some of these were close to being included in the top 10, and some of them I just thought were really cool, important products that are just good workhorses. I'm going to get 2 of them out of the way. Silent Giant air pump. This has been around. I'm going to just throw it out there one more time for the people who don't like us saying the same words over and over and over. The old school guys using the Silent Giant air pumps. This is not the same thing, but I guess the name or the trademark ran out. But it definitely respects the name. So the Silent Giant, I think, is available from 7 ports. If you're a casual hobbyist, you might not appreciate the importance of pressurized air, but I use it for my quarantine tanks. I use it on some air-driven skimmers. I use it to degas my Kalkwasser reservoir to get the CO2 out of the water before it goes into the calc reactor, which will bind up with calcium hydroxide, creating calcium carbonate, and thereby neutralizing the hydroxide effect of raising pH. And it's really great for having new fish come in. Right? Instead of acclimating to the tank, acclimate them to their own water with an air stone and let the air degas the carbon dioxide to slowly bring the pH up. But I have one Silent Giant, right? So I have
For all
one.
of that.
Yeah, and I have routed out with semi-rigid tubing to wherever it needs to go, and I got a little station for the quarantine, and the long-term holding, and for the receiving, and it's just a great little workhorse. Yeah, so if you're looking for something that's not a dinky little vibrator air pump that you'll get at a local store, and not quite a giant commercial unit that's going to be loud as heck in your house, the Silent Giant is like this perfect, powerful, medium-sized pump that is going to drive a solid 10 air stones without blinking, and it's got 2 outlets and a little adjuster on there, a little rheostat. Yeah.
Yeah, not much to add. I use them for quarantine because that's, I think, one of the biggest mistakes people make with quarantine is oxygenation, especially with Prazi.
You gotta have it for everything.
Yeah.
For everything. Dude, I keep an air stone in my quarantine tank when I'm not even dosing. If there's a fish in there, whatever, you have an air stone. No matter what happens to that tank, you have pressurized air gassing up your water.
Yeah.
And that's 90% of the potential problems gone.
Yeah, and I have, usually a batch of fresh salt water that I do, automated water exchange with. And, once I got it mixed up with the mixing pump, I turn that off and I just have an air stone keeping it circulating, right? Keeping it moving so it doesn't get all stagnant and gross. So everybody needs an air pump.
So the other one that didn't really rise up high, but I know was going to be an important product, is the Nuwa Maxi. All right, so we all know the Aquarium Systems MaxiJet pump from back in the day. We all know the Marineland branded one when they bought the Aquarium Systems US brand that's available from a lot of places and is of questionable quality regarded close compared to the other one. And then less of us will be familiar with the Cobalt Aquatics MJ pump, which has not really been available. And my understanding is that that original factory that was making the European version changed hands. So now that is being made under the Niwa Maxi pump, right? So MaxiJet, then MJ, then a Maxi. It is the same pump in a different box, but it when you need a small little water mover, a little power head. Man, I just loved MaxiJets. As I'm talking about it right now, I was like, man, I need to make a little MaxiJet powered powered reef tank, just because that was just such a perfect little power head with a nice small nozzle that would create a nice jet of water for actual water flow in the tank, because that's what we used to use, or powering little media reactors, or just getting some water moving. You know, the Niwa Maxi, it's great, but it's the Italian version, and no one is going to be showing off this device. But if you have it in your toolbox, you'll be glad that you have it when you need it.
You know what Cobalt needs to bring back? Maybe they still make it, but I have a hard time finding them. The Duetto internal filters.
Oh,
Are those still made?
give me 1 second. Talk about something. I think I have one under the new brand.
Oh. So what I mean, obviously they're great for popping into a small quarantine tank, but I always like to use those in my sump when I just wanted to run a little bit of carbon every once in a while. So it's just an internal power filter, but it's just bomb proof, and you can load it up with carbon, stick it in your sump. You know, the flow helps, get detritus out of your sump, right? Kick that up. I kind of use them as like a media reactor in a way.
Oh, yes. Yes, carbon, GFO, aluminum oxide, a little bit goes a long way. And people have been saying forever, like, don't put like a pound of anything in your tank. Yeah, people install like media reactors that hold a gallon of media.
Well, like the ones that look like the carbon block RO cartridges, it's like, that's a lot of carbon, man. And
that's a lot of media, bro.
But a little Duetto, you just pack it with some carbon and run it for a night. It's just, I loved those filters. I still have one that works.
I have one that has a non-adjustable heater glued to it. I literally super glued it to it.
Oh, I thought it was packaged that way. I was like,
no. I glued it to it because I got tired of the suction cups, and this is before we had a ton of different magnets to use. And so the Duetto is awesome. I know it's available under a different brand, under a different name, but if you see it, I want to say it's Hagen. I looked at a couple of Seche things that I have in my little nano aquarium product stash. It's not in there, but I know it's out there. Those molds are still being used.
That's good.
I want to say it's Hagen that's making it in a few different sizes.
Yeah, those things were great. Anyway, I had nothing to do with the rebranded MaxiJet, which I think we've all used in the past, right? And it's a good, dependable power head. It's good for... I liked using them to feed media reactors, or stick one in your sump again to keep your sump kind of stirred up, stuff like that. They're handy.
Absolutely. All right, so here's an oddball one: the MaxSpect anaerobic block. So they came out with like this biomedia block, and I want to say it's resin that holds these beads together. So it's high surface area, water flows through it really well. But inside, you get it as two blocks, and inside there's a very small square cutout, and you get a small piece of what's that material that biopellets is made out of? The corn-based carbon stuff. You know what I'm talking about, but it's a carbon source that you put inside, in between the two blocks, and it's supposed to get anaerobic in it. And the reason it didn't make the cut is because I've had one in my fish display tank for a while, but I haven't been diligent enough, one, to really see if it's doing what it's supposed to, and I might need two for that tank to really keep the nitrates down. It kind of reminds me of the old Nitrex box, where you had this plastic box and you put this weird like cut up rubber media inside of it, and it's supposed to just bubble out nitrogen in your freshwater aquarium. If any listener is out there knows where I can find a Nitrex box new in the box, I am dying to add that to my little aquarium product museum. I'm dying, but yeah, that was just a fascinating product. And so I just feel like the MaxSpect anaerobic nitrate reducing block needs to be put through some more paces before I can really give it the seal of approval and be like, oh yes, this will work in the real world.
Yeah, I'm not big on biomedia blocks. So
It sounds legit, right, though?
yeah. I think
Not so much the biomedia block, but if you have a fish tank, or you have the kind of tank that creates a lot of nitrogen, or a lot of waste, a lot of nitrates, and that's a problem, this could be one of the tools that you use to help tamp those nitrates down. It's so funny, in the same session of reef therapy, we're like, ooh, we're adding nitrates. Ooh, we're trying to get rid of nitrates. Oh, here we're measuring nitrates.
no, but it makes sense in a fish-only system, I guess.
Yeah.
Where you're not really using the coral biomass, maybe not even a refugium. Like if it's like a true fish-only system that's not loaded with any type of invert life.
Or in theory, you could also use it in a reef tank that you want to feed a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have a reef tank and you just have let's say an NPS aquarium or an anemone system, and you want to just feed them a lot, your protein skimmer is going to do some, your filter roll or mechanical filtration is going to do some, and then this could do some. It just needs to be a little bit more verification to get the seal of approval. But it makes sense in theory to have a small carbon source within a biological media of this kind, and I'll be trying it out some more, or continue to trying it out over the next year. I'll be sure to report back if I get some clear positive or negative results. Did you have any products that I hadn't really talked about or haven't really mentioned? There must have been some products that caught your attention that kind of mimic the MaxSpect or the current USA Orbit Light that just didn't really like bubble up to the top or get some kind of attention.
I should have written it down. There was one that I was thinking about earlier, but now it'll come to me. Trying to think.
All right, well, let me talk a little bit about the Isolate MT. This is a trace element additive that I really thought hard about including in the top 10. But then I really thought about how if you have your trace element dosing on lock, this is not going to do anything for you, right? And so I feel like this is just going to be one approach to boosting those minor and those trace elements in a tank that has pretty high demands. And I'm currently using it along with a lot of other products, and it's kind of hard to get, so it's a little bit more of a an experimenter's bottle, I guess. There's not too many places that sell it. They're not really trying to push it out there. They're still like in stealth mode, I guess. Captivate Aquatics, I think this is the Reef Blueprint dosing line. But yeah, a cool little product. If you're not really hardcore about your trace element dosing yet, this might be one way to kind of fill in that gap in your periodic table of elements. And I don't know, just if you're not dosing any trace elements, your corals need them, especially if you have a lot of corals. You can, if you do a lot of water changes, you don't really need to worry about trace elements. If you do a lot of water changes, don't have that many corals, or don't have that many fast growing or big corals, trace element supplementation is not going to dramatically change how you enjoy your reef tank or interact with it. But I think the Isolate MT is going to have kind of a niche. It's going to have a niche following with a certain group of reefers who are not like all in with the entire Red Sea Reef Care program or the Triton method, or any of these other companies that are trying to sell you like 20 bottles. Yeah, that's an exaggeration. 8 to 10 bottles of everything to add to your tank.
Yeah, I'm trying it, but I don't know if I would get the. I have several large corals, so I do feel like I have a good level of biomass, but the new experiment from a guy who never really did water changes was, I wanted to see, okay, what's life like in a tank where I do vigorous water changes, right? So I may not then, that experiment may conflict with the experiment of adding a trace element additive, right? I'm still tinkering with it because there might be stuff there that's not adequately replenished via my salt mix, especially when I'm only doing 10% water changes.
And you can't underdose.
Yeah,
you can't underdose. Just even if you've never added elements or these really esoteric trace and minor metals, if you dose a tiny bit, your corals will thank you. Dose a little bit more than that, they'll be grateful. You dose a little bit more than that, they'll be like, whatever. You dose more than that, and you have a problem like I'm having right now in one of my tanks where I got a little bit cavalier. I'm like, ooh, I got a lot of corals in here. I'm not dosing the tank, I'm dosing the corals. And guess what? I got some of my thinnest, I don't know, this is an interesting observation. Only my super thinnest branching acropora literally, I don't want to call it RTN because that implies I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for my ICP results to come back, but die off. But it wasn't like total. It was definitely partial, and it was where the branches were thinnest, and it was only like 3 totally different strains of Acropora carduus. And some of my other corals are starting to look a little bit, some of my other acros have a little bit of a touch of the zeovit, if you know what I'm saying. Not all of them, it's just a couple of them, and I already did a water change as I'm waiting for some ICP results to come back to figure out which element went too high, but I know I did that. I know I was like, I'm not dosing the volume, and there was an initial dose and then like a subsequent dose after a week or 2 of dosing, and I just stuck with the initial dose because I think my tanks are badass and I have a ton of corals in them, and so they need more juice, and now I had some partial die-off and learning the hard way. But I dosed it in a bunch of different tanks. It's only that one tank where I was like, I did a little bit too much.
I've been using just a tiny amount, and I haven't seen any adverse reactions. I did panic for a while because my big old leather was closed up for days. But then I come to find out that one of my fish started taking a liking to it and was chomping on it a bit. Fortunately, he or she got bored, and now it's back to its normal form. Because I was kind of like,
that's funny because it really highlights that there's certain problems in reef tanks that come up that you can get very wound up about.
And reactive, yeah.
An ick and a little bit of coral die-off or aptasia or valonia, and you know what? You might just walk away, just leave it be for 3 months, come back and realize that's not a problem anymore.
Well, and it was funny because we had this discussion that if you had an angel munching on coral, you would kick the angel out, and I would probably just say, all right, I'll just stop keeping that coral. And it felt like the universe heard us talk about that because they were like, all right, let's grab one of your oldest corals and have this happen. Now what are you going to do? And I was sitting there like, oh, this is a tough decision, but because I was worried a leather of that size, if it started to deteriorate from stress, would really do a number on my tank. I did remember the product that I felt was a good honorable mention for 2021, and that is, again, speaking of automated water changes, Kimura came out with the X2SR, and it's like they had one for water changes.
I feel like they're releasing something like this every 4 months.
But this thing I think it's a liter per minute. And it has built-in float switch ports with float switches, which is really important with an auto water change system, right? Fail safes. And so the reason I like it is, you always talk about standalone like Trident. The dose as a water change system to get all those fail safes, to float switch in your, hey, to let your salt, your saltwater container's empty, or hey, we think the old water pole line is clogged and we're just adding a bunch, right? Like having that float switch in your swim. It's like that's so important to something that's going to run for 24 hours and you're going to ignore it or you're going to kick it off while you're out of the house. So I really admire that this thing is standalone and it comes with all the fail safes and the fact that it can do a liter per minute. That's pretty impressive because that's about a gallon every 4 minutes. So for like a larger reef system where you're trying to get, because I think the dose maxes out at 33 gallons per 24 hours per day. That's as much water as you could change, which if you have a massive system, is not really a whole lot. So the fact that you can do 4 gallons in a minute, I mean, it's 900 ml. Anyway, I thought that was kind of cool, like that there was a new product in the auto water exchange space. So there you go.
Cool. Very cool. Well, I'm glad you like it. And I guess, the auto water change enthusiasts can take a look at that. And I got 2 more products that I want to discuss, and I think one is going to be just really well received, and that's the Reef Uno. that one was neck and neck with the max spec jump. So for those of you that don't know, Refi is kind of like the new Nanobox. Remember Nanobox from back in the day? I'm only talking about 10 years ago, but he was making handcrafted fixtures with lots of great paint jobs, a really pragmatic assemblage of LEDs, and he was using a lot of Philips LEDs way before Philips made a light of their own, and it imparted a really unique spectrum to the corals that were underneath it. And I feel like the Refi Uno bears the torch of Nanobox Reef in terms of first of all, the Refi Uno, they have several different fixtures, the Uno, Duo, and a couple others. But the Uno is the only one that I've played with. But it's a 150 watt light for $350. It's a small box. It's got a ton of different LEDs, a ton of different colors, a ton of different channels. It's got a built-in small LCD display. Not an LCD display, more like an LED display.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's sharp and the thing is, I wanted this thing to shine a little bit more, but it is still very much an enthusiast light. And the reason I say a little bit more is like it doesn't come with an app, so you have to log into a particular IP address on your phone, but the screen on the device itself tells you the IP address. So you just punch that in your phone. It's just not that super smooth, streamlined experience. But then it gives you like crazy control over all the different color channels. It's lots of programming functions. It's a good form factor. They really all in with like what they call reflectors. I know that's been used before. I can think of the company already. But like just a real like deep well of reflector material that every LED sits in to punch all that light down instead of secondary lenses, so it still has that primary lenses, but it did suffer a little bit from kind of the Orbit Marine thing where the blue colors, amazing, it's so much like I'm more than half of that power. That total 150 watt power is in 395, 400, 420, 430, 440 nanometers. Like so much of it is going into this really deep blue lighting. If you want the deepest blue light, I don't think there's anything like offering more than the Refi Uno right now. But one of the drawbacks is that a lot of those LEDs, they're kind of like the quad die packages, and 400 and 410 and 420 nanometer LEDs, you don't really see that. So the light is there, and unless you have kind of a UV meter or a blue light meter, it's not going to register in the PAR spectrum. And unfortunately, when I pushed it at full intensity with all the whites on, they had that same thing going on as the Orbit Marine, where the white was not complementing the blues. It was of a flat white paired with kind of, really deep blues, did not create a really appealing, bright coloration to the tank. It's nothing like the 150 watts. If you set the Kessel A500 at 150 watts, because it does 185, it's nowhere near that bright. But I still think it's a really fun enthusiast light for someone who wants something to tinker with and just wants something really different, or wants to try to bring out a lot of those deeper fluorescent colors. If you were doing a tank really with just like a lot of deep water acros and Leptoceras, Madrasis, Stylociniella, all those kind of cryptic-ish corals, man, I think that light would really, really shine. To be honest, I probably need to set it up on a tank and run it a little bit longer than I have, but it was close. It was close, and I just think I want to see this light reach, a 0.1 or a 0.5 iteration, because I think some subtle tweaks to the spectrum. I'm not even asking for the app, right? The control was fine, but I think some subtle tweaks to the spectrum would just really make this light more appealing to more people.
Yeah, the things I liked about it, I didn't get my hands on it like you did, so everything was just what I read about it. But the general consensus is there's not a lot of glare, right? Like it did a really great job of,
punching light down.
Yeah, and not creating, this blinding glare while you're staring at your tank. there's a lot of light companies that are trying to simplify the controllability of the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
right? Making it more beginner friendly, but it starts to neuter it a bit for like the people that really want to tinker with
That's a
spectrum.
great choice of descriptive words because that's exactly what's happening, as will be showcased in the last product I want to discuss. But continue with the Refi Uno.
Yeah, so with the refi, I mean, there's so many dials you can turn in terms of those diodes, right? So I thought that was cool for somebody that really wants to get into that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I like a good app on my phone, so I hear you on that part, and I completely agree with you. Like that's a must-have for me. But I did kind of think it's cool that there is a built-in Wi-Fi, and it's essentially just running its own little web server.
Yep.
Is
Yep.
what I
Exactly.
at least I imagine. And then I like that he. There's a lot of people that are really focusing more on is there really like a good near UV or UV spectrum in lights, and this fixture answered to that call.
It tries.
Um,
It makes a valiant attempt.
yeah, and so I think that's a good thing for those. I mean, I started paying attention to the idea of that when the lenses on one of my lights for the UV diodes browned out,
Uh huh.
and I was unaware because I mean, who stares up into their lights, right? But I had a Favia, I had a Blasto, and I had a green Nephthia where that fluorescent glow in the dark green, like which would be in the center of like your Favia or in the center of your Blasto, it disappeared. And then my Nephthia, or Sinularia, sorry, not Nephthia, uh, became more of a, just like a, I don't know, not like a fluorescent green, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on with all of these, what is it, fluorescent green protein or FGP?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah,
GFP.
GFP. I was like, what's going on? Why is it disappearing in all my corals? And then when I moved tanks, I noticed that the UV diodes, the lenses had browned out, kind of burned out or whatever. The UV diode was fine.
It's
It was the
asking a
lens.
lot
It's
to-
plastic, right?
to expect plastic
yeah.
to resist in any way, shape, or form a concentrated punch of near ultraviolet and high energy wavelengths of blue. That's asking a lot of plastic to do that,
Yeah, and
so-
I may be drawing a conclusion of two factors like this caused that, and I could be way
No,
off,
I think
right?
you're right.
But
I think you're right.
it made me kind of think more about the value of that light, right? That spectrum of light in terms of my corals. It made a big impact on me. So when I see lighting manufacturers care about that space, I give them a thumbs up for that.
And another thing to note is next to the Acro Optics light made in Boulder, Colorado, I think the Refi is the first light ever built by engineers, right? That engineer from start to finish, there wasn't a design or budget or, beam counters along the way, but like, oh, you have to cut this feature, you have to cut that feature. It is for the enthusiast, and I still think it has a lot of merit. So I'm trying to conjure up the application where that super deep blue lighting is going to really shine. But you give me some ideas, especially with the favids. A lot of those favids, the colors can be tricky. Sometimes they're like totally in your face, and other times you're like, what happened to my colorful Christmas favia? It's like greenish and reddish now. It's not like those brilliant colors, but and the next product I want to talk about is the most diametrically opposed to the Refi Uno. The Refi Uno is 150 watts, $350, all the channels, all the colors, really focused downwards. And then the Neptune Sky. I want to start this conversation by saying I love this light. I actually really have grown to love this light. I am not even pushing it. And the only thing that keeps it from rising to the top is either the feature set or the price, right? You cannot price your Neptune Sky at close to $1,000 after everybody adjusted their prices. Same as a Castellet 500X, same as a Radeon XR30 Pro, and neuter the features, like you say. Give me 4 channels of color control from a controller company, man, come on. But the biggest thing for me was price. When you look at this fixture and how it's built And what it does, it is firmly a maximum $700 light. At that price point, it starts to become really competitive, because right now it's at like $950. For that price, you can get two XR15s, which will allow you to light up practically a 2x5 aquarium. Let's just say conservatively a 2x4, right? So for the same price, you get more features, more light, more color, more channels. And then it's funny talking about this now because they're the same company. But then if you lower the price of the Sky to what it probably should be, $699, not $750. No. $699. I feel it's like the money price. It's like the sweet spot. Then you're talking about, for $2,000, you can get 3 Skies. And then for $2,000, you can get 4 XR15s. 3 Skies will give you more light and more spread than 4 XR15s. But because it's priced, because of branding and cachet and the hype, it just prices itself out of being a good investment. That's that. And they haven't been out more than 6-7 months, and the durability, man. Whew, I know. There's a lot of concerns about how that light's going to hold up in the future. But hey, if you sell your light for $1,000 and it's made very cheaply, you can afford to replace components or whole fixtures, no problem. But that doesn't lead to a great user experience or great brand loyalty. Whew. Okay, your turn.
Yeah, how do I put this? So I'm a longtime Neptune user. I love Apex. I'm a control, I love controllability. You and I know we disagree on that to some degree.
I don't think we do. I control everything. I just don't need a controller.
Right. I
love controllability. I just don't like having one questionable black box of a central control center.
So I'll put it this way. Like, a good example is, I don't know how Apple is these days. I haven't had anything break, but I had a MacBook Pro. It broke. I took it to Apple.
Well, that's your first mistake right there.
No, but it was Christmas, right? And I was hopping on a plane to Colorado. Oh, okay. And they were like, yep, this is what's going on with it. We're going to fix it. Where would you like us to ship it to when we're done? I'm like, well, I'll just come pick it up after the holidays because I'll be out of town. They're like, no worries. We'll overnight it to where you are. And then in the end, they just shipped me a new laptop, right? If I pay $1,000 for a light and it salt creep or something breaks it, and I send it in and the manufacturer just gives me like that just unconditional service, right? Then I wouldn't feel bad spending $1,000 on a light. I'm curious about Neptune's future under BRS, or not under BRS, but under Bertram, because I had, and this is deviating from the light a bit, but I have a point. I had is it an EB8 or EB832? Their new little plug, I had one of those die on me where the turning off the plugs didn't work anymore. And it ended up being a $2.
Oh, your controller power strip was no longer controllable.
Right, which could have catastrophic effects for my tank. And it ended up being this like $2 part with really crappy Chinese capacitors on it. You could find them on eBay. It was crap, right? And so I asked them like, hey, what's going on with this? Can we fix it? And they were like, well, first ship it in so we can verify that it's broken, and then we can sell you one in just a brown box, right, at a discount. And it was like, I think like 20% off. And I mean,
still making money.
I was like, yeah, come on, guys. Like this. And then the new one, you crack it open, and that $1 part has been replaced by something made by Meanwell, which is a reputable company, right? Meanwell makes a lot of LED drivers. We all know that company. So clearly they found an issue and they upgraded the components to make it more reliable. And it just pissed me off that I had to spend that much money to replace it. I didn't feel like I got that. You spend a lot of money for a premium product, but when the crap hits the fan, we're there for you. I didn't feel that way.
We're going to give you that white glove treatment.
Yeah. So meanwhile, I'm running my tank on power strips from Home Depot, till I get the new one in, right? At that discount. Again, I'm not trying to harp on Neptune, but so when you come at me with a light at that price point, and then I see everybody online gut it and take it apart, you know, kind of like the iFixit guys do with the newest cell phone.
I did it first.
You did it. And I see the internals. I'm like, if that thing gets water up in it or salt spray, there was no coating, right, on the board. Again, I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of debating whether the build quality is good or bad. All I'm saying is, like, what happens when that thing breaks? Am I going to have to call up Neptune and then they'll sell me one for 20% off? If it's just that kind of, that's so like, the thing about buying that light is I'm more curious about what the future holds for their, like, I guess their customer service. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to make any enemies. I'm not trying to beat on them too hard about this. I
preach,
just,
brother, preach.
Because I'm a loyal customer, right? I have 2 doses. I have.
It doesn't give you a warm and fuzzy feeling when you know enough about electronics to take apart something like an EB8 or EB38, and you see the DC power supply that they're using, and you know exactly what part should be in there.
Yeah,
and it's like a $2 difference.
Take apart a dose, man. It's I'm not going to argue whether like they're price gouging or anything like that, because there is a lot of money that has to go into R&D, right?
Yeah, but that thing's been on the market for a long time. It's been on the market for a long time. We're ready for a dose too. Come on, guys.
Yeah, so to your point, and I think when the light first came out and there were, 20-page threads on it on the forums, and it was
people who'd never seen it.
People were fired up about the loud. So it's like I said in the beginning of this podcast, there's newsworthy items, but had that, if the price point was lower, then the concerns about the quality or the concerns about the customer service becomes less for me. But when I'm spending a crap ton of money, I either want that thing to be like waterproof, like I can submerge it, or I just want to know that that company has my back, right? I can't tell you how many companies I've called where something critical is broken and they're going to send me a new one because the one I have is...
No questions asked.
That, or like, hey, we'll send you a new one and then you send yours back because maybe it's still doing XYZ for you, right? Like, it's not completely down and out on you.
I haven't spent that much with iFixit over the years, but when I have, minor issues with just replacing the battery on my laptop, iFixit just, hey, do you want a replacement battery? They don't even ask about sending out the old one, or they kind of trust that I've already gone through all the possible diagnostics of trying to fix whatever the issue was, and they're just like, oh, here you go. There's the boom. We know you're not like trying to scam us or whatever for a free replacement battery. But I think this is a great note to start wrapping it up. Is just talking about that hype factor, because no matter what we believe, we're all a part of it to a certain degree. And this is something, the kind of balance I try to bring to reef builders, and that you and I really try to promote here on Reef Therapy. And within the same 10 minutes, we talked about one of the least known aquarium lights, 2 of them actually, the Current USA Orbit Marine Pro and the Refi Uno, that got like 0 fanfare. I mean, not 0. They have a couple diehards, and on this, and just a few minutes later, we're talking about the Sky. And so I just want all the viewers and listeners to consider that. Reef Therapy, we're really going to go out of our way to try to present you with the opposite extremes of the promotional advertising hype machine. There's some really underrated products that I know are going to be really awesome for people's tanks, and there's some super high products that are maybe decent, like the Sky, but just don't warrant the price or the fanfare.
Yeah, and I think to be in your shoes and to try to sit there and come up with this list, you're never going to get everybody's agreement on that. Like, it's always going to be a debatable topic, right? And
no, absolutely. And that's actually that's kind of the funnest part.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm sick and tired of this freaking era we're living in. We can't, practically get together and talk at shows and reef stores, because that's one of the funnest parts. But what's actually super surprising? I think I got leads on like this year's top 5. I have 5 products already here at the studio waiting to be tested out. I think I'm
Tell
going
us
to
about
test
them
one
right
out.
now. Just
No.
kidding.
I think one of them I'm going to test out, do the video, and then I'm going to send it to you. That's a new protein skimmer, a new larger version of the MaxSpect Jump protein skimmer.
As long as that cup comes off, like, without even thinking about it.
you just move the latches. But yeah, there's a lot of great products already. I think 2022 might be one of the best years for new Reef Aquarium products we've ever seen, because there were such delays in the previous year that it's just all going to spurt out in this coming year. I think Interzoo in Germany is finally going to go down.
Oh, nice.
I think they missed 2 years due to the pandemic, because it would have been in May 2020. And yeah, I think this is going to be a huge year for new products, and we'll be sure to bring you guys all the news as soon as it comes out. And I just want to thank everybody, and you, Mark. I want to thank you for being part of this really fun experience and making Reef Therapy one of the top 10 new aquarium products of 2021. It's been super fun and connecting with people on another level, and I hope a lot of folks are listening to this while they're working on the reef tanks, because that's what I do while consuming other people's Reef Aquarium content.
Yeah, it's been a good year for me. Or 2021, it was a bad year on many fronts, but it was a good year for me from a hobbyist perspective. I really from the moment that you and I were talking about what kind of podcast we would prefer to listen to, and then we were like, well, why don't we just do one? And then here we are.
It was easier than that. I think we just said, hey, let's just have a phone call and press record and see how it comes out. So hopefully people have seen a dramatic uptick in the audio and video quality, and just the diligence with which we are publishing these sessions of psychological reef therapy.
Yeah, and it goes without saying. I mean, I just show up, usually drink a beer, and just talk, right? But you guys on your end still have to edit and put it all together, and there's still a lot of work. So I definitely appreciate all you do on your side. So
cool. And I think the last little note to put out there is I think Mark and I might be doing a little something at that show in April in his hometown, if you know where that is. And we'll be sure to let you know as soon as we get the formal invitation and request for us to do something live in person. That's going to be fun. So, Mark, thanks for joining me on this very special session of Reef Therapy. I guess we'll catch you guys on another session very soon.
Yeah, see you soon.
All right. Later, everyone.